Hi, I'm Maggie MacAlpine, the Director of Cybersecurity Partnerships and Evangelism here at Seceon, and with me today is
Manoj Tandon. I am one of the co-founders of Dark Rhino Security and have been in the cybersecurity business for nearly 8 years now, serving the small, medium business enterprises. And it's been a heck of a ride.
I can't wait to hear about it. So we have you here with us to celebrate Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and we've been having some great visitors on this little show, talking about, their depths of experience and what they've seen over the years. And before we came on, you mentioned something really interesting, and I think it's quite a unique viewpoint, which is how you don't think cybersecurity is an IT problem. It's, say it's a financial problem. I was wondering if you could expand upon that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've talked to so many the who's who of cybersecurity, and there's a central theme there that cybersecurity is absolutely a business problem and it's not an IT problem. It is a human behavioral problem. And because it is a business problem, it can be managed. You're not going to really solve it. So the question is, when you look at the elements of reputational, financial, and legal losses,
Mhm.
how do you get the risk associated with those down to a level that is acceptable to you? And if you can't answer that question, or you can't answer, did you materially get the risk down in your legal, financial, and reputational loss buckets for your organization overall, then how are you justifying your cybersecurity program? Do you really even have one? Are you just throwing tech at a problem that it's not really getting solved?
I've heard, I once worked with a CSO who said that he believed that someday we would have everything under a CRO. It would be a chief risk officer who would be in charge of cybersecurity. Does that sort of resonate with you? Or, because we do have this problem, I think, in the industry of like justifying our existence, until something goes wrong, it's hard to get the money, and I've often said that, the defenders have to always justify themselves as a cost, while the attackers, they're the ones bringing in the profits, so they get all the tools they could possibly want or need. So this is like an ongoing,
Well, yeah, it is. And
difficult
what you're
problem.
saying, it absolutely, whether it's tied under the CFO's office or a chief risk officer's office, it's got to be tied under someone, or it's a direct report to the board position, what we would advocate
Interesting.
for from a CISO perspective. I would say that the conversations that are being had is incorrect. It's like, I need a budget for X gadget. Okay. The real conversation is, all right, we have a problem in the resilience of our revenue chain.
Mm.
Okay, now when you start that conversation can be umpteen things. And that's how everybody should begin a cybersecurity conversation, Margaret, is let's look at how we make money and what are all the elements of making money. So do we have an e-commerce website that's involved with this process? Do we deliver our services via we're shipping things? Do we provide consulting? Whatever that mechanism of action is, how do we invoice for that? How do we account for it? Um, how does the money come in? What processes are involved? And those processes involve people, it involves actual processes, it involves checks and balances. You have to categorize all that and then say, all right, this is how we make money. Here are all the assets, being people, servers, endpoints, websites, everything involved with it. This is how we would compromise this process.
Mhm.
You know, I
And it is
know
compromise. Yeah.
it is. It's like, okay, I'm going to find out Margaret's likes and dislikes, and then I'm going to send her a phishing email that's related to that. And then I'm not going to penetrate her account and steal data. I'm just going to watch how she conducts business because I want to know how she is issuing purchase orders. I want to know what those forms look like. Once I have that form, now I'm going to spoof your email. After I spoof your email and I have the form, I'm going to send a note to your financial controller that says, here's a purchase order to pay Acme Inc. Who's Acme Inc? It's Donald Duck's second cousin, right? Doesn't really matter who it is. And I don't have to steal anything. I just had you willingly write a check to me and the money came to me, right? But that's a cyber issue. Now, how many people in their cybersecurity departments are actually having conversations like that around all aspects of the revenue chain that impact their organization, right? If you're a law firm, what if your financial records are stolen? And now let's say we're involved in a lawsuit somewhere, and those records are put out, and my adversary now has all the notes and conversations between counsel and our organization.
Yeah,
What
those
now?
yeah.
That's a cybersecurity problem, right? But it's not looked at. Instead, what we're doing is we're going in and saying, well, we need phishing protection. Well, that's only going to get you so far, because
Mhm.
what you have to do is educate the employee on the behavior parts, set up checks and balances in the process so that when you issue that purchase order, someone is checking Acme Inc. We've never issued anything to these guys. Who the heck are these people? Hey, Margaret, is that really a legit thing? I'm going to call these guys. You know, that those are all checks and balances that have to be built in part of what I'm describing as business email compromise. But those conversations, I don't think, are ever really had. It's all about, oh, we need a new seg, or we're going to update our monitoring environment and put more technical controls in.
Mhm.
But I'm bypassing all those controls.
Yeah, normally you'd say that's cybersecurity, like awareness culture, but you're saying that's really more business culture holistically. That should just be part of all the conversations.
Yeah,
How
because
how are we
now
going to
we're
get?
talking about risk,
Yeah.
right? Right? You look at the CIA triad, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Now we're absolutely executing that CIA. And it's kind of in difference to the mission of the CIO, which is mostly availability to a large degree,
Mhm.
right? So there's an inherent conflict between IT, and if you're really doing cybersecurity well, you are really challenging some of the notions that IT has put into place, which is very difficult to do if they're actually paying your paycheck, because you're not going to do that. Because you got a
Right,
timeshare to pay for in Vegas, right? So you're not going
right,
to do
right. So I can get to DEF CON
that.
every year,
Yes,
in style.
but
Uh,
you get the point. But if we're going to do cybersecurity right and really build a multi-layered defensive approach, technology is important. We need tools like Seceon
mhm,
because they do a lot of things that make our jobs easier and daylight problems. But at the same time, we need to know that the policies, if the technical controls are going to miss something, and they always will, I can guarantee you with 100% certainty, every technical control can be bypassed in some way, shape, or form.
right.
Okay. Then have we put the checks and balances in the processes to further mitigate our risk? Now, can you ever take it down to a zero? No, you're not going to, right? But you can take it down to a level that says, you know what, we really did. We're not, when we send money to someone, it's not as simple as we're just going to ACH them the money or wire them the funds, right? There's checks and balances. Before we accept a purchase order, there's checks and balances. Before we ship a product off our website order, we're going to do some fundamental checks on who did the order, and is that credit card been compromised? Is that they used to pay for it, as an example. We're going to do certain things,
Mhm.
right? And
So,
those are never thought of typically as part of the cybersecurity continuum, and
mhm.
they really, really need to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of physical security. I hear there are a lot of just sort of what's been seen as, anti-fraud, anti-scamming type stuff. But really, as everything's being done online these days, I mean, yeah, got to be some high percentage of business. It really all does become cybersecurity at a certain, there really isn't, a separation there for much longer, I would say.
No,
Mm,
there isn't much. I mean, at some point, you are using an element of technical compromise to compromise processes.
Mhm.
And then the best part is you willingly get the victim to send you cash.
That's the
Now,
really scary one too, because that's not the one that's insured. If I make a mistake and wire you money, that money is just gone, and that's why a
it's
lot of them are going
gone. It's
after
not
that.
going to come
You know?
back. If you look at
Yeah.
the FBI statistics on it, it's not coming back.
No,
It's
no.
not
I
coming back.
think and just
Uh,
ransomware, for example, I think there's been like one famous instance of them clawing back some of the money that was sent, in Bitcoin, and that was under Colonial Pipeline. But that was like a huge government effort. Like the US government was involved in that. I don't hear very many stories like that, where they actually get the money
no,
back.
most are small potato things, 25 grand here, $200,000 there.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's not enough resources in law enforcement to actually go after those small amounts.
But it might be enough
Uh,
to put your business under. I mean, there's small businesses, or to severely, hurt you. I think there's some very high statistic as well about how many companies go out of business after a major
60%,
breach. Yeah, 60%.
60% of
It's over 50.
SMBs are out of business 6 months post breach.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are relying on their cyber insurance policies, and which is something that they see. Again, when you're talking risk, that financial instrument has to become part of the conversation,
Right.
because we're seeing payout rates as low as 30 cents on the dollar for what you're insured for.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that might not
So
be enough to get you back up, probably won't
no,
be.
it may not be enough. And a lot of times people are like, we're never going to get hit, and they don't have a standalone policy. It's part of a packaged policy,
Hmm.
which doesn't really cover much. And so
Hmm.
there's all these false notes. You have to go through
Yeah.
this legally, contractually, and say, all right, first of all, what are the gaps? How are we fixing the gaps? Some of them you need tech for, some of them you need a lot of process changes for. And
Hmm.
then you're going back to your cyber insurance and looking at your financial backstops. And you have to do a cross compare between your controls and what are the exemptions on the policy, and make sure that you are really covering those gaps so that you get the full payout. So,
Hmm.
and this is all part of cyber.
Yeah.
If you're going, so if you're going to really do information security
Right.
properly, if you're going to do infosec, these are the conversations that really need to be had. And I think a lot of technical people are extremely uncomfortable going down those roads. It's very easy to talk about a SIM, XDR, EDR,
Hmm.
endpoint, PAM. I mean, we got more acronyms than the US military. We can,
Alphabet soup over here.
it's alphabet soup, right? Well, it's really easy to talk about that. Zero trust, we're going to do that. Okay, well, what the hell does that mean? Let's talk about that. And
Hmm.
and why is that even relevant to the revenue chain in the company?
Hmm.
Um, those things that is how the conversations need to be had. And maybe that is why we're seeing a lot of the consulting houses that do CMMC consulting or are looking at various aspects of risk management doing so well
Because they're
compared
doing
to
the conversation for you. Yeah.
they're
Like
doing yeah, but
these
then
tough conversations.
yeah, but then the cybersecurity companies are absolutely missing out on building that holistic
Yeah.
approach. Then they are becoming relegated to commoditized offerings. I mean, how many people can you get endpoint protection from? I mean, God, there's a lot of vendors out there for that, right?
Yes. Crowded field. Yeah.
It's a crowded field, right?
But
So
so I've been hearing for years, engineers, really technical, some of the smartest people you've ever met in the world, talking about how like these conversations with their boards or their leadership, like they just can't, they can't get the tools they need, or they're treated like they're just asking for a new toy. And when really, these are major and serious gaps they're trying to cover, because they aren't, posing it in a business sense. They're not getting their point across to people who are also very smart, but their concerns are elsewhere. They're concerned with keeping the business going, concerned with the profit and loss and all that good stuff. So in your experience, how do we you know I had a question here. It was like, how do we change this perspective? How do we, change this conversation? I think we've kind of, covered it, but like something like, what would you tell somebody if you were, standing in front of a classroom right now?
they need to, if you are going to be a leader
Yeah.
of cybersecurity, okay, not a SOC analyst, but if you're
Mhm.
going to be in a leadership role that's responsible for de-risking, you must learn the business that you are protecting.
Mhm.
And okay, a lot of CISOs or directors of security don't come with that business background, but perhaps, a thing to do here is before you start people in those roles, or if you're grooming somebody for those roles, put them in HR,
Mhm.
put them in finance, put them in production. They must learn the business that they are protecting. Otherwise, they're just going to be techies putting in technical controls with no context as to how that control affects or does not affect the operations of the business. Think of it
Mhm.
this way. If you walked into a boardroom and you said, okay, you
Right.
know what? I need $250,000 to deploy Seceon.
Mhm.
You'd get a lot of glazed over looks. People would be
Yeah.
like, what is this? What versus you say, hey, you know what? Last year we had three major infiltrations from the Chinese
Mhm.
that were looking at some of our pumping stations because we're a pipeline operator. And we had almost $2.2 million in losses on business email compromise.
Mhm.
Spending $250,000 is fractional to those activities. And that's not counting, had they been successful, the operational losses from having a shutdown in the system for an X amount of time. $250,000 is nothing here. It's
Mhm.
not a question of if you're going to pay it. You're going to pay it because it's going to offset. And if you're not willing to do that, then we're going to put a report to the board that there's a material risk in the company of $7 million stemming from $2.2 million in potential losses from BEC, from loss of pumping operations for 3 days, from ABC. And then it's your call if you and the board of directors decide that, yeah, you know what, the hell with it, we don't care. Okay,
Mhm.
now you made a conscious choice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Not an accidental one. But also, there's that percent, I've got a percent chance that this is going to happen to us. And I think the thought is that it's zero because why would they come after us? But really, they're going after everybody. There's a total misconception around that too. And, now that but once you have those numbers in there for real and that understanding, though, now you're getting somewhere. Now
Now
you
you're
can
getting
actually make
somewhere. Now
the
someone
argument.
who makes the business decision can say, all right, if it's only a $300,000 problem, uh, I might take the risk on it. But if we're talking about a 3-day operational shutdown,
Yeah.
that is very serious. And that's going to now require us to report to all our shareholders. It's going to be a statement in our annual report. It's going to be a statement in our quarterly filings. It will for sure result in lawsuits from shareholders that we're going to have to fight off,
Mhm.
right?
It's gonna
And
be a
we're going to
big headache.
probably,
Yeah.
it's going to be a big headache. We're going to have to buy credit monitoring for all these customers, or, you know, now you're going to say $250,000. Well, that's really not
Yeah. To cover this percentage of risk,
cover
that
this thing.
yeah.
It's really, it's not a big sum. Let's just
Yeah.
do it.
Let's just do it. Yeah. Well, I mean, what I really loved about your points here is like it is really actionable and you really said something fresh, which I don't hear all the time, which is like making sure you understand the business here and you're not just the cybersecurity person. You're part of this business and this sort of very holistic look. So just, while I chew over that, is there any other thing you wanted to talk about before, maybe we wind down in the last
No,
parting
I
bit
think
of
I just
wisdom?
like to leave people with the thought that it's about risk and resiliency.
Yeah.
And if you're not able to quantitatively look at both of those things and have some ideation of how you are affecting risk and resiliency, then I would argue you don't know how effective your controls are, your cybersecurity program is. And
Hmm.
you really need to go back and take a very serious look because it can have very real ramifications. It always does. You know,
Hmm.
how
Yeah.
many people who've gotten breached have looked in the rear view mirror and said, "Oh, God, I wish we would have done that."
I'm sure a lot of them.
A
And,
lot of them.
it's funny.
Yeah.
It's like, to be a purist, you can't be a purist. Like, you can't just only worry about your own lane in order to actually do the full job.
Resiliency and risk is operations of that's how you make money.
Yeah. Which
If
is
you're
where
not and if you're not if you're a government agency, then maybe you don't care. I don't know. I mean, right.
Mhm.
But if you're a for-profit organization, like most of us are,
Yeah.
those things matter a lot.
Mhm. And they've got their own, government's got their own instruction manuals
Yeah,
and
they do.
compliance
I'm being
guides.
a little
Yeah.
sarcastic. We're in election season, so what the heck, but
Yeah. Exactly.
uh,
Yeah.
but that's it. Other than
Yeah.
that, and
I love it.
if people need help, they can call us. We've been Seceon partners for quite some time. And we're using the technology in our Securities Operations Center in our SOC, 24/7 monitoring, and we do a lot of very cool things with it. And it's been a good team that's been supporting us. We
Yeah.
appreciate it.
That's actually a good point. Who should out there should call you, and who should they call if they hear this and
I'll tell you, we work with high risk businesses,
Mhm.
typically between 30 to 600 employees is our
Yeah.
sweet spot. That large, they have a reason to be spending on cyber. So the risk is a real thing to them. So they could be in
Mhm.
healthcare, they could be in energy, they could be professional service firms, they could
Mhm.
be startups that have mandates from their board of directors or investors to have certain
Mhm.
amounts of percent. But there's a reason, or they're part of a third-party compliance risk program. They're doing business with really big companies, and they are requiring validation that they have the appropriate security controls. That
Mhm.
is where we come into play.
Mhm.
If people are looking for just run-of-the-mill Kaspersky, put something
Not
in,
Kaspersky.
10.99 a month, could we do it? Sure, but it's really, you're not really doing cyber. You're really just you're checking a box with some technology and you're calling it a day, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Manoj. This is actually just a really fun, wonderful conversation. I hope everyone listening had as much fun as I did listening to your wisdom and just like your perspective. It's so fresh. So really, we appreciate your time and with us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Take care.